clearly as what we're experiencing up here in Washington State and Seattle specifically, that there is a need, a dire need, to hear from Alfred White today about breaking these generational curses. As so many of us know, oftentimes we do not deal with trauma effectively. And so we need to be able to find ways of doing that in a culturally responsive way. I'm really excited to hear from Mr. White and for all of you to hear what he's bringing today. Again, thank you all for joining us. And with that, I'm going to hand it on off since we're 22 minutes into this. Sorry again for the link confusion there, guys, but really happy to see all of you. And it's just beautiful to see so many amazing faces and know so many amazing people on this call. Mr. White, please take it away.
So I'm going to need some assistance with my slides. Did you talk to
I got you. I got you, Albert. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Curtis, you want to start for me?
There you go.
Okay. So my name is Alfred White, and I'm the founder of the League of Extraordinary People. And today we're providing a Black Health and Wellness meetup on epigenetics and breaking the generational curse. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. You'll receive a copy of the slides and my psychotherapy flyers. So please take care of yourself as needed. So for all you guys that don't know it, my name is Alfred White, and I'm the founder of the League of Extraordinary People. And after experiencing nearly 38 years of homelessness, I like to say experiencing homelessness and incarceration, in 2004, I swallowed a quarter ounce of crack cocaine and died and was paralyzed. And so after that, I went to Seattle Union Gospel Mission's New Vision Behavior Modification Treatment Program. And then I went on to receive my master's degree in Christian Ministry and Counseling at Faith Evangelical Seminary. So as you see with the bio also said, Alfred has experienced adverse childhood experiences. Yes, I did. I grew up in Holly Park and down in the valley in between my mom's house in Holly Park and my grandmother's house and grandparents' house down in the valley. And so today, as I speak to you guys, I'm here because this is a class in education. I'm here because I contracted liver cancer in 2018 and was told up at Virginia Mason Hospital that I needed a liver transplant. And so from finding out that I had liver cancer, I went on to find out, and this is with quite a fight, that I had fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and irritable bowels. So as you see here in this little bio, it also says that I'm a subject matter expert and a licensed mental health psychotherapist and a substance use disorder professional. Our mission is to launch an educational and spiritual...
This meeting is being recorded.
Hold on, you guys. Our mission is to launch an educational and spiritual enrichment revolution to build hope, resilience, and healing through community empowerment. And our vision... Hold on, Curtis. Can we do a pause?
You got to let me know when you need the next slide. Tell me when to change the slide.
Okay, there you go. I need the next slide.
There you go.
Because I was looking for...
There you go.
Right. There you go. Okay, our vision is to establish a transformational, integrative, and replicable self-healing center of extraordinary people. This residential community model will heal transgenerational trauma through a foundation of safety, trustworthiness, and transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, and voice and choice, and purposely elevating historical, ethnic, and cultural legacies. Next slide, please. Curtis, next slide, please. Okay. So today's topics is going to be epigenetics, the vagus nerve, and breaking the generational curse of post-traumatic slave syndrome. Next. So today, this is an affirmation, a quote from Resmaa Menakem, who wrote the book My Grandmother's Hands, and it just fit perfectly for today's session, today's classroom, so I wanted to share it with you. The answer to why so many of us have difficulties is because our ancestors spent centuries here under unrelenting brutal conditions. Generation after generations, our bodies store trauma and intense survival energy and pass these on to our children and grandchildren. Most of us also pass down resilience and love, of course. But as we saw with my grandmother, and as we see with so many other human beings, resilience and love aren't sufficient to completely heal all trauma. Often, at least, some of the trauma continues. Reginald knocking my grandmother's hands, racialized trauma, and the pathway to mending our hearts and bodies. Next slide, Curtis, please. So I wanted to start off today's session in particular with this piece on dismantling racism, because when we get to talking about healthcare, it's not just talking about race, it's also talking about racism, culture, and what is white supremacy culture. So as we move forward, I want you guys to remember that this is a class. So can I get you to click on our link below here? Curtis?
Can you see that?
I can't see it.
So I'm clicking on the bottom link?
The bottom link, yes.
Okay. It says, it's popping up a Microsoft PowerPoint message.
Hold on.
So.
Hold on.
Yeah.
It's just letting you know that the website might not be trustworthy.
Oh, okay, got you. Okay. So, all right.
So if you're okay with going to the website, you just say.
I did. So can you see that now?
Okay.
Did it change? Can you see the white supremacy culture page? So I have to share that now. So I have to get out and share that. Alfred.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Hold on. I might have something to bring it up. Just hold on 1 second.
Here it is here. We just have to go back to the presentation once we finish here.
Okay, then. Thank you.
So let me know when you're ready to go back.
So you can slide it up. Okay, hold on.
Yep.
So scroll it back down a little bit.
Here?
Okay, now go up just to show me what is culture.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Okay. What is culture? Culture refers to the knowledge, experiences, beliefs, values, and attitudes, meaning, hierarchies, religion, notions of time, rules, spatial relations, concepts of the universe. Hold on, Curtis, can we stop for a minute? I'm having a problem with seeing this slide. Hold on.
Yeah. You want me to read it for you?
No, I got it now.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. What is culture? Culture refers to knowledge, experience, beliefs, values, attitudes, meanings, hierarchies, religion, notions of time, roles, spatial relationships, concepts of the universe, and material objects and possessions acquired by a group of people in the course of generations through individual and group striving. Culture is a knowledge shared by a group of people. Culture is communication. Communication is culture. A culture is a way of life of a group of people, the behaviors, beliefs, values, and symbols that they accept generally without thinking about them, and that are passed along by communication and intimidation from one generation to the next. Culture is a collective programming of the mind that distinguishes the members of one group or category from another. What is cultural racism? And the reason why I'm doing this is because a lot of us don't even have time to read nowadays. So I'm going to add these clips of definition along with the form so we can truly understand what we're talking about this evening. And so cultural racism is how the dominant culture is founded upon and then shapes society's norms, values, beliefs, and standards to validate and advantage white people while oppressing people of color. Cultural racism is how the dominant culture defines reality to validate and advantage white people while oppressing people of color. Cultural racism uses cultural differences to overtly and covertly assign value and normality to white people and whiteness in order to rationalize the unequal status and degrading treatment of people in communities of color. And it goes on to talk about what is white supremacy culture. Another reason why I'm giving this information out is because as a child, when I was growing up, I didn't get the nurturing and the attunement and the attachment and the secure attachment that I should have got from my caregivers. And so they never did explain to me about what is white supremacy culture. White supremacy culture is the idea or the ideology that white people and the idea, thoughts, and beliefs and actions of white people are superior to people of color in their ideas, thoughts, beliefs, and actions. And that's something that we really need to come to terms with when we start thinking out here, because we've been soaked up and self-absorbed by the domestication and the dream of the white supremacy culture planet. And so white supremacy culture is reproduced by all the institutions of our society, in particular the media, the education system, Western science, which played a major role in reinforcing the idea of race as a biological truth, with the white race as the ideal top of the hierarchy. And the Christian churches have played central roles in reproducing the idea of white supremacy, i.e. that white is normal, better, smarter, holy, in contrast to black and other people in communities of color. White supremacy culture is an artificial, historically constructed culture which expresses, justifies, and binds together the United States white supremacy system. It is the glue that binds together white-controlled institutions into systems and white-controlled systems into the global white supremacy system. And this is something that we really need to look at in challenging the laws and the norms of today's society. So for more in-depth discussion on why Black lives haven't mattered, the origins of Western racism and Christian hegemony, check out Paul Kaibo's blog here. So you can go on to actually do some more research. Next slide, please.
You want to go back to the presentation now?
Yes.
Okay.
What we're getting ready to discuss right now, ladies and gentlemen, is the epigenetics of being black and feeling blue. And that is understanding African-American vulnerability to disease. So today, this morning, you guys, this is kind of like usually people have a small video presentation here. So instead of me doing the video presentation, I felt that it would be best for me to share this with you, because I left home at 13 years old. I ran away from home. That's how toxic my home environment was. And so this article here means a whole lot as far as teaching about the epigenetics of being black and feeling blue, so we can understand it in the historical context that it needs to be understood, so we can value our lives today to move on past treatment and to start opening our own BIPOC healing centers. So here we go, you guys. Black Americans and other Americans of color have endured many hardships ever since 20 Africans set foot in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. For 85% of our nation's existence, white-imposed systems of oppression via slavery and Jim Crow, separate but equal, were the bloody and violent norm. Since that time, the persistence of racial discrimination has remained a routine part of the everyday experience. Black folk have worked very hard on a steady path of social mobility through group uplift and self-determination against overwhelming odds. In this milieu of racist deprivation, some Black Americans have managed to find economic, political, and other forms of success against hegemonic countervailing forces of white institutional racism and all of its permeations that thwart Black life as we know it. This systematic inequality has an impact on more than class position. It influences human biology and physiology at the cellular level, leaving the bodies of the poor, the impoverished, and the target more vulnerable to chronic disease. Epigenetics is the science of how the external, now listen to me guys, Epigenetics is how the science of is the science of how the external environment affects us at the molecule level by altering gene expression and function that can in turn be heritable. It refers to chemical modifications or tags that mark specific genes around an intricate DNA complex. These modifications can alter our gene expression, influence our biology and function. Think of a tag as a volume control knob that signals the gene to turn up or down its program function. Our genes listen for cues from the environment, you guys, such as the food we eat, the kind of mileage, where we live and work, the circumstances of our birth, and the race and class-based interactions we share with one another. These factors, in part, determine how our genes respond in ways that expose more vulnerable populations to disease. Human wars, famines, droughts, plagues, physical and emotional abuse, and other forms of social deprivation not only leave their mark on society in harmful ways, but they also wreak havoc deep within the cells of our bodies. And this is very important that we know this, you guys. The cells react to stressors in a larger social structure at crucial developmental times in the womb that have an influence on human health later in adult life, leaving us more sensitive to our environment and susceptible to disease. The longitudinal Dutch famine birth cohort that began shortly after World War II in 1945 captured the complexity of the environmental factors on our genes. Notice I said the environmental factors on our genes. The study analyzed the long-term physical and emotional effects in children who were exposed to maternal malnutrition in the fetal environment. They found that poor nutrition leads to epigenetic changes in gene regulation of the fetus. Let me say that once again. They found that poor nutrition leads to epigenetic changes in gene regulation of the fetus and its developing biological system, which predisposes cells to certain diseases of slow accumulation that include obesity, kidney disease, lung problems, cardiac disease, breast cancer, and a host of additional physical and mental health disorders. So you guys, when you get to looking at your healthcare is more important than any other aspect of our whole body. If you don't have your healthcare, you don't have nothing at all. And so when you start looking at the doctors, they never tell you any preventative information or teach you any preventative information about kidney disease, lung problems, cardiac arrest, breast cancer, or physical and mental health disorders. They're not even looking in that direction. In epidemiology and other closely related social science disciplines, it has been well established that social class position is inversely linked to poor health. Wow. Further, it's well known that health status follows a social gradient with class-based differences in disease frequencies that mirror society. African Americans are constantly regulated to the margins of society where they are continuously exposed to the mundane effects of white-imposed discrimination. Within this space, many African Americans endure daily hassles and sustain assaults for just being Black. These microaggressions can have negative health-related consequences for their mental, emotional, and physical well-being by epigenetically altering the expression of certain cells that control more important bodily functions. Research over the last 4 decades has mounted strong evidence that race-based mistreatment on the basis of physical characteristics like your hair, the bone, the lips, the skin color, the eye shape, takes a heavy toll on Black people, not only at the social and political and economic levels of society, but also at the physiological level, where cortisol, the body's fight or flight hormone, is seen at elevated levels in African Americans. DNA in its sequencing is genetically programmed to perform functions of the body, such as this very stress response. Did you hear me, you guys? It says DNA and its sequencing is genetically programmed to perform functions of the body, such as this very stress response. However, biological processes that regulate these functions can be epigenetically altered to increase the physiological stress response in the body at a higher rate and longer than what is normal. That's where your anxiety and depression comes from, you guys. It's through epigenetics and physical and your physiological stress response. This in turn can influence the normal function of a cluster of differing cells that regulate blood pressure, kidney function, and cardiac function. Scientists can now, did you hear what I said? Scientists can now stop thinking about your health care like your grandfather's 1937 Chevy. Scientists can now investigate these epigenetic modifications on cells induced by the environment, such as the Dutch famine example. And you got to remember that back in the slavery days, that was equivalent to the Dutch famine example. Except we was eating foods that we didn't even know that we should even eat. Remember, we were stolen from our country, our culture. And so the science of epigenetics, you guys, is unlocking significant clues as to how racial discrimination can induce changes to the expression of certain genes linked to biological development and the existence of disease in our bodies. These epigenetic changes can linger for a lifetime and can potentially be transmitted to offspring because Black Americans and their forebears have endured over 20 generations of white-imposed race-related inequities in every major section of society, including persistent race-based discrimination in housing, education, healthcare, jobs, and prison industrial complex. They carry a higher burden of disease. Yes, we do. Health and disease are no longer purely infectious in nature, but instead social and environmental factors account for most chronic disease. It is a function of the dynamic interaction between our genes and the larger society, and epigenetics is providing deeper understanding as to how our genes operate in these situations. African Americans and their descendants have paid an exorbitantly high price for living in an unequal society in a number of reprehensible ways through the practice of forced labor, high incarceration rates, frequent underemployment and unemployment, and low educational expectation, and how significant healthcare challenges are among the most salient forms of white on Black discrimination, and the absence of sweeping governmental reforms that place human rights over property rights. African Americans must take greater ownership in their own health care by becoming better informed on effective ways to reduce stress to the extent possible, given the maintenance of systems of domination and oppression, to have an impact upon the quality of Black life. Otherwise, these persistently elevated stress levels from chronic exposure to race-based discrimination have been shown to be physiologically and mentally bad for health and well-being, both at the individual and institutional levels of society. The result is epigenetic tags with harmful gene expressions, and that's what leads to chronic illness. Next slide, Curtis. On next slide, we're talking about Greek philosophers didn't discover anything. They stole it from ancient Egypt. How many people out in the audience today? I mean, you could probably just show by the support of your hands know that in actuality, that the Greek philosophers didn't discover anything. They stole it from ancient Egypt. And so I had to put this on here so that I can share with you guys some of the thoughts, the stolen legacy. And that's not what you might be seeing on your slideshow, but Greek philosophy was stolen Egyptian philosophy. So-called Greek philosophy was alien to Greece. Greek philosophy was the offspring of the Egyptian mystery system. The Egyptians educated the Greeks. The doctrines of the Greek philosophers are doctrines of the Egyptian ministry system. As we go on, it talks about, although George D.M. James does a thorough job of exposing the indigenous origins of Greek philosophy, he is not the only scholar to do so. We must understand the roots of our ancestors' contributions and the global impact of those contributions. We need to understand who we were as a people and as a culture before we was Americanized and given this culture through the white body supremacy model. It says too often as indigenous minds in mental slavery, we become estranged to the Black origins of philosophy, chemistry, astrology, religion, spirituality, metaphysics, mathematics, divinely proportionate that occurred long before there was a single Caucasian on the planet, still seem to keep this knowledge on the shelf as opposed to absorbing that knowledge and adjusting our present consciousness in accordance with rediscovered ancient Black history. Understanding the genius of our forefathers, ancient indigenous minds, and realizing we have within us now what they have within them. True education not only transforms our mind, but transforms our DNA. One of the definitions of education is actually to bring out learning about the magnificent history of the indigenous mind should bring out the God frequency within that lies dormant in the souls and subconscious minds of every indigenous mind around the country. The ancestors of the indigenous peoples originally from the continent of Africa, especially before it was renamed Africa, have uncovered the mysteries of human condition, constantly interacted with and or manipulate elements of the universe at will, and mastered the mysteries of the cosmos, not only uncovered, but exercised that knowledge to ascend to ultimate enlightenment, the God frequency, and leaving a lasting legacy at the forefathers of high civilization. Next, Curtis.
Alfred, can you see the screen? What's up there? The slide that's up there?
Which one are you on now?
So it says Washington employers, racial equity. Which slide should I be on? Right now.
That is actually on slide 8. 7, so it's actually 7 and 8. So
I'm on 9 right now.
So you've gone too far.
Well, I mean, it just showed the last one just showed the link. It said the epigenetics black and blue. That's 8.
Right. So
okay, so now
we can
because everybody in the chat was saying I was on the wrong slide, so I want to make sure we're caught up. There wasn't a slide for what you were just reading, correct?
No, but there was a link. So the link below the epigenetics of feeling blue, that HATW, that was
that was up there for a while. So that we were on that for a while.
Okay, and so I just got done with that. So now we're on slide 8 and 9.
Gotcha.
Okay. And it talks about this is a report from the state of Washington Employers for Racial Equality, the commitment to progress and equitable future for Washington. And it talks about the indicators of structural inequity in Washington state. And so if you click on that link, you'll find a 17-page document I shared with, I think it was Janice yesterday about this article. I think she's in the audience right now, but this is the document that I was sharing with you about Washington state. And so these statistics and numbers come from Washington state when you actually click on this link, the www.employersforequity.org. So there's some people out in the audience that want to have this information. And it says the causes of racial inequality for Black individuals and families are rooted in our nation's history of slavery, segregation, and the struggle for civil rights. The effects of systems and policies from Jim Crow laws to redlining have been documented through a wide body of historic and academic research. The BCG research further exposes a compelling, though not exhaustive, set of indicators which reveal structural and interconnected challenges that continue to drive racial inequality today. And so one is healthcare, and this is in Washington state. Predominantly Black neighborhoods are disproportionately exposed to high levels of toxic waste and air pollution. And these are the things that cause epigenetic mutations, you guys, which can result in higher risk for adverse health conditions. Black patients in Washington attend routine checkups more often than white patients, but receive fewer routine preventative services like flu shots and prenatal care. More than 1 in 5 U.S. residents avoid seeking health care due to concern of racial discrimination. And that's the doctors. The doctors don't even know anything. If you go to the doctor and ask them about the adverse childhood experiences, you ask them about neuroscience, epigenetics, or resiliency in healing, they won't know anything that you're talking about. As a matter of fact, adverse childhood experiences and their impact on healthcare is not even taught in medical school. What about education? Black students in Washington are 30% more likely to be taught by less experienced teachers. Okay, parents, did you hear that? Black students in Washington are suspended from school at more than 2 times the rate of white students. National research indicates that despite having identical transcripts, the likelihood that black students will be recommended for advanced courses is 13 percentage points lower than its white students. But now let's talk about criminal justice. Because in actuality, all these four spectrums that I'm teaching you guys about today is actually where we're used as a cash crop for the white body supremacy culture. In healthcare, in education, and criminal justice, black Americans are 43% more likely to be pulled over and 2 to 3 times more likely to be searched once pulled over by law enforcement than white Americans. You can also look at compare how many black Americans have cars to white Americans. Black defendants nationwide receive harsher punishments for the same crime, are more likely to be sentenced to death, and less likely to receive sentencing alternatives such as drug diversion or community service programs. They weren't created for us. The unemployment rate after incarceration for black individuals in America is nearly twice as high as it is for formerly incarcerated white individuals. All this stuff is the reason why we're so susceptible to COVID-19. Epigenetics is the reason. Personal finance. Everybody knows personal finance for cars, houses, or credit cards, or anything we get charged the most. The home mortgage denial rate for black applicants in Washington is 13% compared to 8% for whites. Nationally, home mortgages are priced nearly 8 base points higher for black applicants than for similar rate white applicants when priced face to face. White Americans inherit wealth at roughly 3 times the rate of black Americans, and all their wealth is our work. Black Americans are asked for personal income tax statements 28% more often than white Americans when applying for business loans. So if you wonder why your business is struggling, it's not because of anything of that nature. Okay, so in essence, Curtis, we did jump over a space, and so I actually spoke about this. The Greek philosophers didn't discover anything.
Yeah, the slide was in the wrong spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about what is epigenetics. And so before we step into this catechism here, how about any questions before we get moving into the next level, Curtis?
Yeah, so anybody have any questions, just take yourself off of mute. It's the time to ask, I guess, about that first part of the presentation.
So none, Curtis?
There's nothing in the chat, no questions. So if nobody has any, okay.
I got a question. Hi, this is Marsha. Yeah, just I don't know if it's a question or just as somebody who's lived, lived in North America for about 30 years, but I immigrated from Africa. I just wanted to know, because I find like going back to Africa very therapeutic from a mental health standpoint. And I wanted to find out from you if, when you talked about the history and that, for those that have traveled back to the continent, if the experience is the same for them. I don't know if it's a very general question. It's just something that I even recommend for those that haven't. I just wanted to throw that out there.
And you're right, it is very therapeutic for us to go back and be around our culture and our ancestors. You'll get a soothing, you'll sense that you're home in your body when you go back there, and I've never been there, but I know about working with trauma and adversity in the body. And when you get to certain environments, you're safe, because one of the things that we do at the League of Extraordinary People is to focus on the guiding principles of trauma-informed care, and safety being the first principle. So if the environment is not safe, then it's not safe for you to be there. So you won't operate at your maximum potential. And so that was one of the things that I had to work on with my cancer and healing, is to build capacity in my body from the various trauma and adversity I experienced after being out on the streets for 38 years, after being pistol whipped, stabbed and beaten up by gang members, had my jaw broke 3-4 times, nose broke 3-4 times, and so I come today, you guys, from experience. I don't come today, just because I got a master's. I spent 38 years roaming around on these streets and stuff, smoking crack and shooting heroin before I got into the room with God. And that led me on to my present day status, my ministry, my relationship with God, and my faith and hope in the Word. And I'm spreading His teachings in this format here for our community members, so we can get out behind the plow of white supremacy and forge our way and be the ancestors that I just spoke about, that we were before white people even came to light and bearance in the world today.
I got a question. So my name is Kevin, and my question is, in terms of epigenetics, how in this present time can we take that knowledge that you just articulated and implement it? So for instance, 3 years ago—
Now you want me to divulge my business plan?
No. You know, we're friends, we're good. No, actually, so about 3 years ago, Alfred, as well, I'm sure you know, I made a decision to actually go completely plant-based in terms of my diet. And what I've realized is that I was able to turn around some factors that I was dealing with that were a part of my environment and my culture. And so now, being in my 50s, 57 to be exact, I have absolutely not one medication that I'm on. I have no high blood pressure, I have no diabetes, I have no kidney issues, I have none of that. And I think it's all related to, of course, our talks that we have had in the past, but along with understanding how environment, culture has affected all of us in many ways, not just, like you said, psychological, but also in the health arena. And I think that right now, what you're articulating to us and you're teaching us today is such powerful information, and I'm just enjoying this session. But I just wanted to echo in on the fact that you have, before this Zoom meeting, you have been helping me along the way.
Hey, so if you guys—
If you're not speaking, please mute your microphones.
Thank you, Curtis.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so here's the deal, you guys. So how I turned my liver cancer around is for strictly nutrition. I got out my books. I did the same thing I did when I created the most successful continuum of care program at Shakespeare Hospital. You know, after I swallowed a quarter ounce of crack cocaine in 2004 and died and was paralyzed, and then had to go through drug court and made it through all that stuff, I kind of found out that I was resilient, you know, after spending 38 years out there ODing on the streets and stuff. And so what I did was I picked up some books and started researching, and I found out that if you buy a Mercedes or a Rolls and you go get AM, PM gas, your engine's gonna start pinging. So I went back and started eating food that's like Chevron from Tektron. They got some Tektron in it. You know what I mean? And so I started only eating organic food. I got to reading lots of books and found out that epigenetically I can reverse my bad genes by creating a different environment. So when we're looking at this slide here, it says, what is epigenetic and how does it relate to childhood development? Epigenetics is an emerging area of scientific research that shows how environmental influence children experience and affect the expression of their genes. So check this out, you guys. My childhood experiences was bad. My mom, was chasing men, and she had I got a bad dad. He's a donor. He didn't hang out. I'm on level 67 in life now, you guys. And so now I know that all this stuff, that my childhood environment influenced my current health care. Remember back in the day, some of you guys are old enough to remember that cheese and the government cheese and that cereal in the bags and that non-fat milk. And so those are the types of things, and being around all that anger and adversity and trauma in our childhood experiences actually sets the tone for our genetics. And so this means that the old idea that genes are set in stone has been disproven. Nature versus nurture is no longer a debate. It's nearly always both. So if your caregiver, your parents, wasn't nurturing you during your developmental time, they say that the DNA makes up our genes, accumulates chemical marks that determine how much or little of the genes is expressed. So if we're not being nurtured, licked on, our mom's doting over us, it says this collection of chemical marks is known as epigenome. The different experiences children have rearrange those chemical marks. So the whippings that we got, the food that we ate, the play that we got, the play that we didn't get, the type of toys that we have. It says this explains why genetically identical twins can exhibit different behavior, skills, health, and achievement. It's all about our genes. It's our DNA that's set in stone, and our genes are transformed by the environment that we grow up in. So it says epigenetics explains how early experiences can have lifelong impacts. The genes children inherit from their biological parents provide information that guides their development. A lot of you guys aren't even thinking like you should be thinking. Our bodies are based on, our bodies are the presence in the foreknowledge of the many bodies of the ancestors that we came through. So as we stand today in our body as a man and a woman underneath the definition of the term through white supremacy, we carry the bodies of our ancestors. We carry the bodies of that indigenous group that I spoke about from Africa, where we was kings and queens. And that's who we are. And so it says, for example, how tall they eventually become or the kind of temperament that they could have. So epigenetics is this that explains how this stuff. So it says when experiences during development rearrange epigenetic marks. And so during development, they're actually talking about while you're in the womb of your mom. And that govern the gene expression. They can change whether and how genes release the information that they carry. And so it talks about the food we eat, the medications that we take, the medications that they give us in the hospitals, the medications that the acts of omission and acts of commission. It says thus the epigenome can be affected by positive experiences. And so when you look at the ACE, the adverse childhood experiences, and then you look at the three realms of ACEs, and you look at the environment, the household, and the community, and you look at being Black, how are we going to have any positive experiences? How are we going to have supportive relationships and opportunities for learning? How are we going to have these type of things when we got Black people who's actually have ascribed to the white supremacy culture, who's actually using that language against his own brothers and sisters? And so you look at it, it says here, or negative influences such as environmental toxins. A lot of you guys don't even know the environmental toxins. It's the DDT that they have, that they sprayed on the food, the pesticides that they sprayed on the food in the farms. It's the stuff that they sprayed on the food down in Salinas, California, where they found that male frogs was having female litters. That turned female. And then what about your stressful life circumstances? With all the stressors that you have, look at the ACE questionnaire. All those things are stressors inside the home. Then you look at the three realms of ACEs and you look at your environment. Look at all the toxins that you're taking in. Look at all the dollar stores with all these products that's made out of actually products that we threw away to China. So we're putting these type of substances on our skin. We're eating products that have all types of poison in it that doesn't agree with our bodies. The only things that agree with our bodies is organic. If you're not eating organic, if you're not making your own salad dressings, if you're not making your own everything, you guys, you're in trouble. It says, and here it says that which leave a unique epigenetic signature on the genes. So all these things, when you look at this infomercial, it talks about light, it talks about energy, it talks about love, it talks about science, it talks about food. These signatures can be temporary or permanent, and both types affect how easy the genes are switched on and off. So in actuality, what they're saying is, you guys, and I'm pulling up another book here to share this with you, and it's called Bad Genes, and it comes from a book, The Body Keeps the Score, The Brain, the Mind, and the Body, and the Healing of Trauma by Bessel van der Kolk. And so it talks about bad genes. With such pervasive problems with such dysfunctional parents, we would be tempted to ascribe their problems simply to bad genes. Technology always produces new directions for research, and that's something that you guys need to really get a hold to, is technology and science. And when it became possible to do genetic testing, psychiatry became committed to finding genetic causes of mental illness. Finding a genetic link seemed particularly relevant for schizophrenia, a fairly common affecting about 1% of the population. Severe and perplexing form of mental illness, and one that clearly runs in families. And yet, after 30 years and millions upon millions of dollars worth of research, we have failed to find consistent genetic patterns for schizophrenic or for any other psychiatric illness for that matter. Some of my colleagues have also worked hard to discover genetic factors that predispose people to develop traumatic stress. That quest continues, but so far it has failed to yield any solid answers. But recent research has swept away the simple idea that having a particular gene produces a particular outcome. It turns out that many genes work together to influence a single outcome. Even more important, genes are not fixed. Life events can trigger biochemical messages that turn them off or on by attaching methyl groups, a cluster of carbon and hydrogen atoms, to the outside of the gene, a process called myelination, making it more or less sensitive to the messages from the body. While life events can change the behavior of the gene, they do not alter its fundamental structure. Myelination patterns, however, can be passed on to offspring, a phenomenon known as epigenetics. Did you hear me? Myelination patterns, however, can be passed on to offspring, a phenomenon known as epigenetics, once the body keeps the score at the deepest level of the organism. So we are just beginning to learn that stressful experiences affect gene expressions in humans as well. Children whose pregnant mothers have been trapped in unheated houses in a prolonged ice storm in Quebec had major epigenetic changes compared with the children of mothers whose heat had been restored within a day. So they compared the epigenetic profiles of hundreds of children born in extreme ends of social privilege in the United Kingdom and measured the effects of child abuse on groups. Differences in social class were associated with distinctly different epigenetic profiles, but abused children in both groups had in common specific modifications in 73 genes. And I want to express this to you. During slavery, especially chattel slavery, they beat the slaves. And so, in essence, when our parents beat us, that was another form of some stuff that was carried on from slavery. We don't beat our kids in real life. We love our kids. That's something for everybody who have kids to think about, that we've actually shaped and formed our kids based on white supremacy culture instead of the culture of our Black community. You need to ask yourself, why did they leave with us so fast that they didn't want to take any of our culture? All the other nationalities and cultures got to bring their cultures with them. And so it talks about young brains are particularly sensitive to epigenetic changes, but so are baby boomer brains, older senior brains, and throughout adult life, because experiences very early in life, when the brain is developing most rapidly, cause epigenetic adaptation that influence whether and when and how genes release their instructions for building future capacity for health, skills, and resilience. That's why it's crucial to provide supportive and nurturing experience for young children in their earliest years. And that's not only for young children, but for all people of color. All people of color need supportive and nurturing experiences, and that's the reason why I embellish the people in the community. If you're not using a trauma-informed care model, you're not operating out of integrity. And so it says services such as high-quality health care for all pregnant women.
Alfred, what slide are we on now? So I make sure the right slide is up there.
So we're actually on slide 17.
Okay. Let me get it up there. Got it.
Okay, services such as high-quality health care for pregnant women. We need high-quality health care for the pregnant women's fathers so they can know how to be a father. In 1968, in the Monahan report, I don't know if you guys noticed or not, but they actually created learned helplessness. If you looked at the Monahan report, they created learned helplessness in the Black community so they can put social workers in the community. And so that's the reason why education and healthcare and criminal justice system and personal finance, we have to change all those paradigms. And so it talks about infants and toddlers. And so who taught us anything about infants and toddlers, especially look at the income ratio. We got people now that's making $7 an hour, and we can't get $15 an hour. In Seattle, it costs $36 an hour, I think, for livable wages, just to maintain a place by yourself. And so as well as support for new parents and caregivers can quite literally show the nonprofits. I don't know if you guys notice or not, but that's another institution of white supremacy. Because here's the deal is, nobody that you know black has gotten one of those big buildings and has written the curriculum and built the building. And so how can we keep going to the white supremacy culture, asking them what's wrong with us and how do we heal ourselves? We got to go back to love and healing and look at life as an organism, not through the eyes of race. And so it says, in quite literally affected chemistry around children's genes, supportive relationships and rich learning experience generate positive epigenetic signatures that activate genetic potential. So when you're coming out of this group today and you want to know what you need to do to get started on this, one of them is supportive relationships and rich learning experiences and to promote your curiosity and your openness. Next slide. Curtis, the early development?
Yeah, it's there. It's on there.
Okay. I want to stop here right now and ask if there are any questions.
Yes, sir. I have a question.
for me.
I have a question. When you were discussing the epigenetics and as far as children and the effect that it has on them, as far as with how the children are reared and how they are disciplined. How can we get that over to our own people, as to say there's a better way in disciplining our children instead of back how they used to do when we were younger? What is your advice on that?
Town halls, education. We need to stop having treatment centers. We need to have information centers and just start sharing our own information. We need not to keep looking for white people to rescue us.
I totally agree. But do you think that we will ever get to that point as African Americans?
We already there. We're in this meeting right now. We're already there. So let's not let's not do that. You know, talk about weight, you know what I mean? Come on, you know, some people used to call me impulsive, but you know, being a former addict, you know, if you wasn't impulsive, you wasn't gonna be an addict. So,
yes, sir. That's the thing, is how can we all make sure that we're all on one accord to make this happen? I am a believer that we should all be educated, but how can we go into each of our communities to make that happen?
So by stop stigmatizing people in your own community, you know, like even though an ex-offender, you know, and an ex-addict, you know, and sometimes smoke crack and shot heroin simultaneously, I'm still a child of God.
Yes, sir. That's right.
And that's what we need to start recognizing, and we can't see. There's a whole nother story behind religion in this too, also, and so we need to really look at, are you people really caring after your people?
Right. I totally agree.
It's just like the Good Samaritan. And so a lot of people want to placate me from where I come from, but I'm a lived experience. I can tell you how it goes. You want to follow me through the jungle, or you want to get in your car and go? You know what I mean? And so this is the same thing with this. And so we know nothing about our anatomy, and they purposely did this through the white body culture so we can be their cash crop. Look at all the money we spend on healthcare and on medications that don't work. And then look at all the stuff that they've had recalls over on medication. So that's what makes it hard to take COVID-19, especially for me, with all my autoimmune disorders. So I need to get my body straight before I even try to think about letting them have me put something in the body. But after all the stuff they did to us, look
that's right.
What they did in Oklahoma. Look what they did with the syphilis. You know,
yes, sir.
You know, let's start talking to each other in real time. So when they talk about this early development here with the caregiver with traumatic experiences, all our caregivers going back 20 generations have had traumatic experiences. So subsequently, the mother releases the cortisol and the baby absorbs the cortisol through the placenta, and that can impact the baby's Hpa Axis. And for a lot of you guys that don't know what the Hpa Axis is, it's a hypothalamus pituitary and adrenaline gland. That is truly our homeland security. And then the central nervous system, and that's made up of a sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, and also our vagus and ventral vagus system. And then we talk about the limbic system, and that's where our hippocampus is at, and our amygdala. And we talk about the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic means that it works without you even knowing that it's working. And then it talks about, because during this caregiver, that caregiver struggles to regulate. And so to regulate, you guys, as we're talking about a homeostasis, it's the homeostasis, and that's to regulate. So when we have anxiety or depression, it's because we're out of balance. It's because of our Hpa Axis. It's our central nervous system, because we're running up the side of our sympathetic. And so when we're running our sympathetic, that's anxiety. And so the attachment relationship between the caregiver and the child may be strained. I didn't have a good relationship with my mom, all through life. And so it can impact the child's development of a core sense of self. Now that I know at level 67, I have a problem with the core sense of myself. And so that's the reason why we have to work on co-regulation. In actuality, you guys, we don't have psychological problems, we have physiological problems. It's our hormones, it's our body, it's our environment that's out of balance. And that's what's caused us to have these fluctuations in our anxiety and our depression. So when ability to integrate experiences, and then the epigenetic experiences. And so if your caregiver isn't communicating with you and isn't attached to you and telling you which way to go and guiding you through every step, but is beating you and threatening you and doing all these things, guess what? Childhood and adulthood is going to be rough. And so it talks about adulthood. A person who has had a caregiver with untreated trauma may be more prone to PTSD after the trauma. So this is what I'm talking about. We got kids trapped in the homes of adults who have untreated trauma. And so they'll be more prone to PTSD after trauma. So you know what that's like, man. They struggle to repair after conflict. They struggle with all the relationships they have with themselves. They unintentionally bring out negative behaviors in others. And then they're emotionally detached, and women talking about, what's wrong with you? And they be their man, or what's wrong with their child? And they'll be more prone to disassociate. Disassociate means, you guys, that they reach the top of the apex, and now they're up in the dorsal vagal, and that's the area of disassociation. That's the last slide that we're going to be talking about today. And then down below here, the next slide, Curtis, is the 3 realms of ACEs. Adverse childhood and community experiences can occur in the household, the community, or an environment and cause toxic stress. Left unaddressed, toxic stress from ACEs harm children and families, organizations, systems, and communities, and reduce the ability of individuals and entities to respond to stressful events with resiliency. Research has shown that there are many ways to reduce and heal from toxic stress and build healthy, caring communities. But you can't do that, keep going to these white body supremacy culture therapists and expecting for them to heal you. They don't even know anything about ACEs. They don't even understand anything about the physiology. They do understand about the physiological impact of it, but they're not about to teach you because they don't even feel like you'd be even worthy to even learn it, or you wouldn't even know what they're talking about. So when you look at this 3 rounds of ACEs infographic here, and you look at the household and the incarcerated family member, divorce, homelessness, parental mental illness, alcohol and drugs, bullying, domestic violence, maternal depression, emotional and sexual abuse. Well, you say, oh, that didn't happen in my house, but it probably happened in your neighbor's house. It probably happened in Ray, Pookie, and Shaniqua's house, and they didn't tell you about it. And then you look down in the community and you look at the community, it's filled with discrimination, substandard schools, substandard teachers, historical trauma, historical trauma. How about not telling historical lies, and then historical violence on people of color, and then lack of social capital and mobility. We can't even get any loans and be able to move around and do like we want to do because we didn't carry any wealth with us. They stripped us of our wealth. And then we have structural racism. And then we have poor water and air quality. Do you know what poor water can do to you? That's the reason why so many people of color have high blood pressure, have liver cancer, have all types of autoimmune disorders. Diabetes is an autoimmune disorder. Substandard wages, it creates all kinds. You can't do nothing with substandard wages. You can't even take your kids out and buy toys. You got to go buy toys at the dollar store at Walgreens. And then that's the same reason why that you don't see Europeans at Walgreens. You see them at other high-end stores like Costco because there's better products, less toxins in the products that they're selling us. And then we got transgenerational poverty, poor housing quality and affordability. That's housing that has biological stresses in them, you know, infections from these viruses, bacteria, fungi, such as mold, parasites, and more, and rats and mice, and then the chemical stresses, such as toxins, and then physical trauma from an accident, a burn, a surgery, or massive infections that can harm and destroy tissue and abuse. Psychological trauma, events that feel overwhelming or difficult to cope with, such as loss of love, divorce, financial struggle, childhood emotional neglect, living with chronic diseases. You guys, there's so much going on, and they all, see, this is what you guys fail to understand. They already knew all this. They already knew all this. Now, coming down to our last slide, Curtis, I want to stop again and ask anybody, do they have any questions? Curtis?
Alfred, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, you were speaking about food, and you were also speaking about the cortisol that the mother, through her trauma, actually passes on to the child. Does that, once that child has this cortisol, and it has, how is the effect on that child that child now shows different behaviors? How does that kind of work?
So so it's up here in the infographic. It said it impacts the Hpa Axis, the central nervous system, the limbic system, and the autonomic nervous system. And so this happens, it causes relationship issues and the development of, it causes problems in the development of a core sense of self and the ability to integrate experiences. So HPA is your hypothalamus, your pituitary, and adrenaline axis. Your central nervous system is your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous systems. And then your limbic system is actually your hippocampus and your amygdala. And your amygdala is actually, and then your autonomic nervous system encompasses all those things. But in actuality, your amygdala is something that we have yet to really understand. And so I'm going to share this with you. And it says that as you explore the 5 main brain areas implicated in trauma that is described discreetly, briefly below, keep in mind that none of these areas work in isolation or works alone. So the fear center, the amygdala, the interoception center, the insula, the memory center, the hippocampus, the thinking center, the prefrontal cortex, and the self-regulation center, the cingulate cortex, they all 5 of these things have to be connected. And because of early development of childhood trauma, they're not connected, because here's what's going on. The main objective of the amygdala is to determine whether a particular situation, context, person, etc. presents a threat or a danger. It's an area that's been called the smoke alarm by trauma expert Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. And one of the goals of trauma treatment is to reduce activation of this area of the brain. Deactivation of this area can reduce reactivity of trauma triggers and arousal and reactivity symptoms of PTSD, such as hypervigilance, feeling on guard. So here's the deal, you guys. It said the amygdala, it didn't say nothing about your prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortex, it doesn't start to develop until the age of 11 or 12, and it's not fully developed until the age of 25. So in essence, what it's saying right here is that the main objective of the amygdala that's actually that was developed in the mother's womb and is fully functional at birth is determine whether a situation, context, person presents a threat or a danger. So you guys keep thinking that you got to be thinking in order for your body to react from danger. No, it's your physiology of your body that reacts from danger. So it's because we have 3 brains. And the first brain is the reptilian brain, and that's the brain stem. And this innermost part of the brain is responsible for survival instincts and autonomic body processes. So you don't even know
Alfred,
what's going on. Yes?
What slide are we supposed to be on?
On early development.
Still early development?
Yep, number 18.
Okay.
Okay. And then the next is the mammalian or the limbic midbrain, the mid-level of the brain. This part processes emotions and conveys sensory relays. And that doesn't start to develop until the age of 4. And then the neomammalian cortex or the forebrain, the most highly evolved part of the brain, this area out of control controls cognitive processing, decision-making, learning, memory, and inhibitory function. That doesn't start till at the age of 11 to 12. So as we look through this and we look at the 3 realms of ACEs, and we go down to the vagus nerve. I was just asking if there was some more questions, and Kevin came up with a question.
So let's do this. Let's save them to the end because we got about 30 minutes left.
Okay.
And we still need to get through about 5 more slides, and then we can open it up for questions at the end.
Yeah, actually,
that work?
We got 3 more slides. So let's talk about the vagus nerve by Suez and Krowak. The vagus nerve is involved in nearly every physiological action in the human body. Let me say this again, you guys. The vagus nerve is involved in nearly every physiological action in the human body, and harnessing its power can have an immediate and dramatic impact on our well-being. Wow. Wow. So how many people have been to therapists and you guys have talked about this? I'm sure they told you about this. The vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve originating in the brainstem and traveling through the face, neck, and lungs, heart, diaphragm, and abdomen, including the stomach, spleen, intestines, colon, liver, and kidneys. Vagus is Latin for wanderer, an appropriate name for the longest cranial nerve in the body. The vagus nerve is intricately connected to mood. Did you hear me? The vagus nerve is intricately connected to mood, immune response, digestion, and heart rate. More metaphors abound for the vagus nerve, the superhighway of your body, transporting vital information between your brain and the rest of your internal organ. Now, let me say this one more time, because I'm sure that the doctor told you about this, or you saw this on TV while you was watching Madlock or one of them doctor shows, that the superhighway of your body transporting vital information between your brain and the rest of your internal organs is the vagus nerve. A sympathy conductor directing how fast or slow, loud or quiet your nervous system will be at any given time. Did you hear me? It says it's nervous system. It can control your nervous system. And it also says air traffic control, monitoring a multitude of moving parts to make sure all of the physiological airplanes fly safely and efficiently to their destination within your bodies. So when you look down and go down to slide number 21, now Curtis, the vagus nerve. When you look at the vagus nerve on the left in the color here, everything that's yellow is the vagus nerve. It runs all the way down to our scrotum. In actuality, when you look at on the right-hand side, that's the vagus nerve. That's the vagus nerve. That's the vagus nerve. It goes all the way down to our scrotum. All the way down to our scrotum. It touches in the lungs. You see it says vagus nerve. It goes through your lungs, your heart, your spleen, your stomach, your pancreas, your liver, your gallbladder, your kidney, your small intestine, and your large intestine. And the small intestine is the most important area that you guys, that's the reason why I tell people to get functional medicine doctors, because you're small, you will always go and have your colonoscopy, but guess what? It only looks at the large intestine. It doesn't look at the small intestine. That's the reason why you got to go see a functional medicine doctor, and you got to get a bunch of special blood tests so you can find out what type of microbiology is down in your small intestines. I still have some autoimmune disorders, and so I see a functional medicine doctor, and that's what we're working on now to rid me of these autoimmune disorders. Next slide, number 22. Number 22, you guys, is in actuality our nervous system. And so it has our parasympathetic, it has our sympathetic, and it has a parasympathetic ventral vagal system. The parasympathetic dorsal vagal is the emergency state. That's actually our brake. And so when you look down here, where you want to live your life at and focus on right now, is in the green zone, down here where it says joy, in the presence, groundedness, social engagement, where you're connected, you're safe, oriented to the environment, you're in a good environment, you're curious, you're open, you're compassionate, and you're mindful. And when you look at it on the right-hand side, it says that when you're down there, you're in your parasympathetic nervous state. You're not in your sympathetic, and so that's your rest and digest state, and that's your ventral vagus. And so it increases digestion, intestinal mortality, resistance to infection, immune response, rest and recuperation, circulation to non-vital organs. And then it talks about the hormone oxytocins. And then it decreases defense responses, the ability to relate and connect when you're in that state. And so when you're in your next state, and it says arousal increases, and so when you start to get worried or concerned, anxiety, fear, panic, you're in flight. You're moving away from your social engagement, from your rest and digest piece. And so, you in here, we got frustration, irritation, anger, rage, and then fight. And then it talks about the sympathetic nervous system. It increases blood pressure, heart rate, fuel availability, adrenaline, oxygen circulation to vital organs, and blood clotting, pupil size. It increases all that. And then it decreases fuel storage, insulin activity, digestion, salivation, relational ability, and immune response. And so that's the reason why, we start shutting down on people. And then when you move further up and you get past sympathetic, and there's a thin line between love and hate, and you become overwhelmed, then you helplessness. That's when learn helplessness. And then that's when you start moving more slowly. That's when you're depressed. And then that numbness come in. You can't feel nothing. And they're disassociated. Your body starts to collapse. You feel that shame. You feel that shutdown, that hopelessness. You feel that hopelessness. You feel that preparation for death. You feel trapped. So when you look at it on the right-hand side over here, it says you're in your dorsal vagal, your emergency state. It increases your fuel shortage and insulin reactivity, endorphins that numb and raise the pain threshold. And then also, too, the heart rate and blood pressure decreases, the temperature. That's when you feel cold, muscle tones, and that's when you see all the facial expressions, eye contact, awareness of the human voice, social behavior. So all those things, when you start notice your voice start changing, all those things are controlled by the ventral vagal and by your nervous systems. So as we scroll down to the next slide, it's time for questions and answers, folks. Any questions out there, Curtis?
So here's what we're gonna do. If you, I'm gonna stop sharing. This is Alfred's information. If you want to grab it real quick, and we'll definitely send the slide deck out to folks. We'll send the chat out to folks, and we can send the recording of this session out to folks as well.
And then
so what we want to do,
Curtis, tell them to scroll down one more slide, down to slide number 24, and they can actually put their phones up to the screen, and they can grab this link here, because everything we have is on a tree link now.
Gotcha. Is she talking about this one with the this one here, League of Extraordinary People?
Right. It says contact us.
Okay.
And that way they can see all our video work, and then all the open path if somebody wants to get services. We provide services. I provide services on a sliding scale fee of $30 and $60. So anybody who wants to receive some services, all they have to do is to contact us.
Okay. So what we're gonna do is open it up for Q&A, and if you could raise your hand, and then we'll call on you. I'll do my best to call on you in the order that the hands are raised, and then we want to make sure we keep our questions to questions, not statements. And Alfred, keep the responses brief, because I know we're going to have a lot of people want to ask questions. So make sure we're allowing folks an opportunity, everybody a chance in the short period of time we have left to be able to speak and get their questions answered. Okay. So Sanford, you want to unmute yourself and then ask your question.
Yeah, thanks for what you guys are doing here. Appreciate it. What is it that I can do? I live in Australia, and I don't get to hang around a lot of Black folks or therapists. I'm studying counseling now. What are some things I can do here in Australia to take care of my physiology and my well-being and connect more with people of color?
Focus on trauma-informed care platforms, and focus on ACEs and adverse childhood relationship experiences, and also focus on somatic experiencing, because in actuality, and somatic experiences is a psychobiological method for healing trauma and other stress disorders. It is also based on multidisciplinary intersection of physiology, psychology, biology, neuroscience, and medical biophysics, and has been clinically applied for more than 4 decades. So that's what you need to do if you want to focus on healing yourself and healing the people in the community. We shouldn't focus any longer on treatment. Treatment is the same old game that Europeans been doing. I don't need no treatment, man. Just be honest, man, and tell me, man, who I truly am, and let me step into our legacy. We're kings and queens for real, and that's the reason why I shared that information with you today.
Thank you, sir.
Cool. Thank you for being here, Sanford.
Thank you.
Who else has a question that we can present, who would like to come on and ask Alfred?
I just have a quick question. A quick question. How did the brother from Australia find out about this?
I text you through me. I text you back.
So I don't have a question, but I have a comment. You guys are doing a phenomenal job today. There's amazing information that's being shared, and I just want to thank Curtis and White King, and I'm going, not Alfred White, but Dr. White, because the knowledge you guys have and are sharing are just tremendous, and I'm going to thank you for this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody else with any questions?
First, I think there were some questions in the chat, and maybe they did get answered. One that I saw that I thought maybe others may have been wondering, you know, as we talk about a lot of these practices, and thank you so much, Mr. White, this was just phenomenal. But as we talk about a lot of this, Ayana asked, outside of food, how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect and preserve our glands?
How you protect and do what? You said your glands?
Yeah, and preserve our glands.
You got to start eating, and you got to start hydrating your body, and that means you got to start drinking better water. So myself, I use spring water. I was drinking high pH water, but that wasn't good for my body. So basically, you got to start. There's a trauma-informed care, nutritional infograph. So if anybody wants anything of that nature, what they should do is email me directly, and I'll send them some appropriate resources for that. But it's straight through your diet. You have to do your diet, and then you have to do you too. You got to get in the mirror and work on you. And if you get Resma's book, my grandmother's hand, she talks about always doing the reps. And so the reps means that you have to start doing this stuff 21 times, you know, and the reps is like push-ups. If you don't do the push-ups, don't expect for yourself to become healed, you know. And so that's like walking around and knowing I got liver cancer and smoking cigarettes and stuff and drinking soda pop and drinking coffee. So I don't drink coffee. I don't do caffeine no more. I don't do none of that stuff no more, you guys. I don't do sugar. I don't do none of that stuff. I don't buy any pesticides that I know that's had fertilizer on them or anything on them that is not organic. I'm just straight organic. I don't even think you guys know that it takes 70 minerals a day for us to feed ourselves. And do you know that in actuality, we may be able to get 12? And 100 years ago, they had all the minerals is in the ground. Now they're no longer in the ground. And so when you guys are looking at stuff, if you're not addressing healthcare and your politicians aren't coming to you and focusing on things that's going to influence health, then chances are you're in the wrong room. You need to get out that room and find somebody else.
Thank you.
Thank you,
One more question. I see your hand up, Miss Carlette. But one more question from Sultan Juma in the chat was, how are we supposed to get out of white supremacy when that's all that is surrounding us, or that all that is around us?
It's by getting community leaders together like myself, me and my business partner. We have 1.5 acres out in Federal Way that we want to create a residential center of excellence for healing the BIPOC community. And so the curriculum and everything will be to out and use out white body supremacy language. And we got to call people out when they use it to oppress our own brothers. And so we have to be real careful. There's a lot of people out there that are skin folk, but they're not kin folk. See, I'm from Seattle, Washington, and so I'm representing the community. I went to Franklin High School, I went to Beacon Hill, Asa, Mercer, Harrison. That's way back in the day for some of y'all, And so I believe in Seattle. I believe in God. I believe in resiliency. And I know that we're the fruit of the earth. And I know that the word of God is for real because, like I said, you guys, I left home when I was 13 and only God protected me. And I swallowed a quarter ounce of crack cocaine, died and was paralyzed. Only 9 days coming out of prison where they gave me 42 months for a $35 drug sale. So you tell me, what was that like? When blacks didn't have nothing to do with drugs, they bought drugs in the community so they can disrupt our homes. And then also, too, you got to look at all the laws that they created. Back in 1968, 65, somewhere in there, they made it illegal for women who was on welfare to live with men in the home. And so they've been taking the black men out of the homes for forever. And then making it so rough for us that we can't stay with the woman because we don't know who we are. We don't even know who the woman is. And we're not even getting the appropriate information.
Thank you for that. Ms. Carlette?
Yes, sir. Dr. White, what was your email address? You said that we could email you to get the information regarding
Alfred, and it's right up on the screen right in front of you, right? It's on the contact us page. It's alfred@tleop.org.
I'll send out the information, or one of us, Treyana or I, will send out the information in the email to everybody who attended today.
Okay, thank you.
And one more question in the chat. Thank you for that question, because a lot of folks were wondering about your email. One more question in the chat is, what do you think about the COVID vaccine right now?
That's a loaded question for me because I got 3 autoimmune disorders, so I can't even begin to even think about taking anything like that. With the way my body is right now, because I don't even know. So right now I'm getting ready to go underneath the battery of tests at a naturopathic doctor called Inside Health Institute out in the Bothell area. So anybody, her name is Christine Bowen, and you can tell her I referred you. But Inside Health, because you can't go to a medical doctor that's practicing Western medicine to find out about the truth of your health care.
Agreed. Miss Angela Davis in the chat is asking about what is the collective next step, and if you have an answer to that, please provide one, Mr. White.
The collective next step is actually I'm trying to get together. I don't know if it'll be Seattle U or University of Washington, but I'm looking for some millennials and some Gen Xers, an intern, so we can put together a grassroots program. We're looking at buying some more land that I think we can put up 94 units. And so what we want to do is create it's almost like a urgent care, but it'll be for the BIPOC community. And it's going to be called the League of Extraordinary People Center of Excellence. And it's going to be a residential and community clinic, but it's going to have a whole resource center in it.
Beautiful. Also, too, there's so many great collective efforts happening around our health and wellness. I know about the Tubman Center for Freedom and Health, or Health and Freedom is another one, and there's a lot. Y King is putting something in the chat there so people can also see that. But if you're really interested, Angela, we can make sure not only that all of you will get this recording and then the recommendations, but there's a lot of great work happening, and you can hear about some of that amazing great work at the State of Africatown. Thank you, Y King, for putting that in the chat. The State of Africa Town is going to be held on the 20th of this month, so next Saturday. We will be having our State of Africa Town, and that's where you'll also be able to hear from amazing folks doing a lot of great work on the ground. I think what we're in right now is such a transformative time where so many of our people are saying, look, we need to step up, we need to do more, we need to come together. There is the Institute of African-Centered Thought as well. Dr. Arisha Day is on the line. Dr. Arisha Day, do you want to, I think you're still here, do you want to speak on IACT?
Yes, I'm still here. I don't really have that much to say. All I can, I put the website in the chat, and next Saturday we're having from 11 to 1 Black Mental Health Symposium with Shechem and Shechem, and some local people that have done the healing circles here. Patricia Valentine is one. Angela Davis is one. We may have someone in a current gentrification talking circle speak. When you go to our website, you'll see we offer these healing circles in conjunction with the Umoja Peace Center. The name of the theme for the symposium is Integration of Spirit and Soul, Healing the Black Family. We specialize in ancestral healing. And I am the founder of the Ancestral Healing Identity Theory. So all of our programs are based on African-centered thought. And I did want to say, I've seen these reports and I hear this, but you cannot put a white paradigm into an African-centered framework. If we keep reading reports that are being published by Eurocentric systems, all we are doing is reiterating systematic racism through acculturation and assimilation. Because as a result of acculturation and assimilations, we have mental disorders. That's what a mental disorder is. A mental dysfunction is that we need to ground ourselves in whatever our spiritual beliefs are to become whole. And that goes back to African-centered thought. So the more that we continue to look at those former theories of those white psychologists and psychiatrists and their reports, it really isn't doing anything unless you're looking at it as a reference for what not to do. Other than that, the healing is not going to move forward. And we need to give credit to each other where credit is due. And I give credit to Joaquin Garrett for all the work he's doing in the community. I really do. Because that brother has really got something going on in all facets, from, land trust to education, you name it. And I have to give kudos to Curtis for Black Dot. And that's where the healing begins. Regardless of any differences we may have with each other, we really need to put that on the shelf and move forward. That's my comment. So
before you jump off Arisha Day, can you share about the healing circles that are currently going on, and then the upcoming trainings for somebody who might want to be a facilitator of healing and talking circles?
Yeah, and that is in conjunction with Africa Town. And so I'd like to say we have the gentrification talking circle training that's going on right now. And then we have two people on here that are in that circle, in that training. And then we have the mental health healing circles dealing with trauma and ancestral healing. See, our history didn't begin with slavery, but our trauma did. So when we get to that point, I'm just leave you on that note, as you requested, Curtis. The next training, we're in the gentrification now. The next trainings start next month. Cohort 3 starts next month. Go to the website. You can see or shout out to Curtis. He can connect you with me, but you can get connected with me on your own. So I just like to say this ancestral healing piece. Thank you, Alfred, for presenting what you did. But this ancestral healing is deeper than that. And we just have to pull together and move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Rishade. I see another kind of question folks are asking, how can they connect with trainings that are not Eurocentric? And Dr. Rishade has provided the website. You guys can look up IAX, Institute of African Centered Thought, and connect with Dr. Rishade as well. Mr. White has also provided his information. So those are two places that I think are great places to start. As she just uplifted Shechem and Shechem, for those who don't know, also a world-renowned priest, really, in terms of African spirituality. And so you guys can look up Asara Set as well and find resources there. I think that there's a lot of great books. If you look up TAUI Network, TAUI Network, I'll put that in the chat as well. But we got about 7 minutes left. Let me make sure I'm not missing any. Thank you, Dr. Rishade.
Okay. Can I jump in real quick?
So you will be able to see the training schedule there too. Before you jump in, White King, I just wanted to say that I appreciate everybody being on here, and thank you so much again. Go ahead, White King.
I just wanted to reiterate, as you can see with Mr. White and Dr. Rishade, we got giants in the room, right? And I know there's more. I see Brother Haru just jump on. Brother Curtis is a coach as well. There's so many people that are, we're all vessels for the healing. Like, it's not one person or, we're all vessels and we're getting tools. And some people have more tools than us and they're willing to share those tools with us. They're doing it at very, very, I would say, discounted rates, but this is like priceless and invaluable. So a couple things is, so Africatown, we're building buildings, but we know buildings don't build community and don't necessarily build the people. So it's what's in the buildings and the spaces. And so this is what's really important, that we bring our best selves. We have to build ourselves first, and then we can build everything else. We built the world before and we can do it again. So right after this at 12 o'clock, we're gonna be having a Africatown Plaza, which is our next building, which is set to break ground this year on 24th and Spring, 130 units over community and commercial space, which will again feature a great amount of art to create the place and the experience for healing. A lot of our people are traumatized. They will not even come back to the Central District. Some people come to the community and actually break down in tears. So we can understand that these are really having, physical ramifications on us, this displacement that we've gone through multiple times, right? And so in every, for the last 500 years, it's been pretty terroristic and traumatic experiences that we've been having in places from Africa to the South to coming to the North in these cities and then being displaced again. So we're striving to build these principles of healing, ancestral, celebrating our journey, the best of our journey, actually into the physical built environment as we're constructing these buildings. And so you can come on and see where we're at and give input to what this design, what this art program, what this placemaking program will be. So it can be a space of gathering, communion, connection, healing going forward. And we are going to have a national and international artist call so that we can have Black genius bringing beauty into our spaces from all over the country, all over the world, and definitely including our local Black artists as well. So that's 12 to 1. Right after this, I put the link in the chat if you want to jump in. And then also just lifting up again the State of Africatown 2021. Next Saturday, definitely please spread the word, tap in. We will be having people it'll be virtual. And there will be people from, again, across the country doing good work, sharing with us, because Africa Town is about sourcing the brilliance from our people, regardless of time or geography. That means we're going back and we're going all around the world to find the best of us so that we can bring that into our spaces and build our communities of the future. So again, thank you to Curtis for setting this up, Brother Alfred, everybody that's joined in. We know we have a lot of work to do, but we know we can do the work. We've done it before. So thank you.
And thank you for Triana for being back, the hostess with the mostest.
Definitely shout out to Trey, the face of Africa Town. She's the face and the voice of Africa Town, 100%.
I have one more thing to say. The symposium next Saturday is free, so tickets will be on Eventbrite.
Thank you for bringing Shechem back again, Arisha Day. Joaquin, you did mention Haru. Haru, you jumped on very late. I'm so glad you were able to jump on, but folks have been wondering what they can do with a lot of the information Mr. White provided today. Do you want to talk very quickly? We got like 3 minutes left, but if you want to say anything about how folks can connect with Asar Aset and some ancient spiritual practices?
Sure, they can reach out to my person directly, haruchayazaman@gmail.com. The email's in the chat there. We can talk you through how to connect with us. We have Wednesday night meditation and Qigong. We had Saturday morning Qigong today. We have Sunday PNM's meditation when we meditate on those essential faculties that support our spiritual well-being and success. Jump on definitely Shechem if he's going to be speaking on next weekend, jump on that and get deeper information around his teachings. He's one of the most prolific African writers of our time, most plagiarized writer of our time, a leader of the oldest Pan-African spiritual organization in America. We've been doing this for a long time, 47 years going strong, rebuilding, to Joaquin's point, then rebuilding Kemet, resurrecting Africa, living truth, meditating and living truth. This is what we do every day. So we want to understand that we're divine beings, how to express and live like divine beings, how to transcend our brokenness, our pain, our tragedy, and identify with the Most High, the Creator, the universe, or one, the universe, whatever you want to call that essence, that understanding, and realize our divinity, our power, our brilliance, our strength, our creativity, and rebuild, resurrect ourselves and our people in oneness and harmony.
Yes, thank you so much. Glad you were able to join right before we had to get off. And for those of you who will be joining the Afritown Plaza Art, thank you again, Joaquin, for putting it in the chat. Thank you all for being here. This has been one of our most amazing Black health and wellness meetups. Again, you guys all have the connection. This happens every second Saturday, and we're going to try to make sure that they're always impactful as we move toward collectivizing our health and wellness in a culturally rooted way. So thank you all again for being here. Enjoyed all of your comments and love. Peace and blessings all.
All right.